And then they looked at me and said, you'll probably be dead in 2 years. We have absolutely nothing to offer you other than surgery. There's no therapies, there's no drugs, there's nothing. And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. How can I try to turn that death sentence into a life sentence? And so my oncologist initially put me on a drug called interferon to help keep the disease from coming back. The interferon was a horrible, nasty, debilitating drug for me. It gave me severe flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having a terrible case of the flu every week for 5 years and knowing this isn't going to cure me. As my doctor used to say, we're just kicking the can down the road. All we're doing is trying to buy you more time. Eventually, the interferon became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit of the hospital with a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is not compatible with being alive. Somehow I survived that, but I had to stop the interferon, and almost immediately the cancer came back in the exact same spot on my foot. That necessitated my foot being amputated in 2018. Cancer worked its way up my leg. 2019, 2 more surgeries. And then in 2020, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, I had a tumor kind of in my ankle area that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia. It broke my leg.
Oh, wow.
And my only recourse in the middle of the COVID pandemic was to have my left leg amputated above the knee. And I also found out I have tumors in my lungs, which I still have. I'm still being treated for those tumors. So yeah, it's been a 13-year odyssey of trying to die, but God's saying, yeah, not yet. We're going to keep you hanging around for a while.
Wow. And so in 2020 is when you authored your book. Is that right?
Yeah. After I had my leg amputated, during that 4 to 5 month period where I was healing from the amputation, that's, I was like, well, I need something to do. So, well, why not? Let's write a book and see what happens.
So, I mean, it's unbelievable to think that you're going through all of these different stages of dealing with this rare cancer, and you're on the treatment with interferon, which I can't imagine being flu sick every week for that period of time. What goes through your mind about continuing that type of therapy, and how do you think about the pain that goes along with being in that situation versus, and I've heard you talk about how you've got choices around suffering versus not so many choices about the pain.
Absolutely. I mean, interferon, despite everything I've gone through during these 13 years, that 5-year window of interferon was probably the worst of my life. I'm about 230 pounds, and I lost 50 pounds during that therapy. As a matter of fact, there was a point where I was so skinny that I was pretty sure I could go hang gliding on a Dorito. I lost all this weight. I lost my ability to taste. I was constantly sick. I was so sick at one point of being sick that I just prayed to die. I felt there was sort of 2 camps. There was people that were living, and then there was the people that were not dying. And I was in the not dying camp. I didn't feel I was living. I wasn't contributing. I wasn't working. I didn't, sometimes a good day would literally be get out of bed and make it to the sofa. That's how bad I felt. And so it was, come on, God, just take me out of this. Let me be done with it. Let my family get on with their lives. But obviously God didn't take me out of it. I mean, he did give me the strength to go on. But I've always felt that I don't think we suffer in vain. I think we need to find the meaning in our misery, the message in our misery. And there's something we're supposed to learn from, you and I were talking about that earlier. There's something we're supposed to learn from the events, the good things, the bad things, the failures in our lives. And what is that? What are we supposed to understand to make us better? And I'll tell you 2 things I've learned through this, artist, that I think are incredibly important. Number 1, I don't think you truly know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. It doesn't have to be cancer like mine has. It could be any kind, abusive parents, alcohol, whatever it ends up being. And secondly, and this is going to sound kind of weird, cancer has made me a better human being. I've been asked if I could live my life over again without cancer, would I do it? And I honestly don't think I would. I would take all the stuff that I've been through and I'd do it again, because I am absolutely a much better human being now than I was before this disease hit my body.
That's a powerful statement to make, and I think it is. It's very indicative of the way you think about things. And if any of us were to recall all the things, if we could recall all the things that have happened to us that were formative, and understand where we would have gone if we had not had that thing happen to us, I think a lot of us would make similar choices to live the way we did, because it ultimately led you to where you are. But it's a hard thing to conceptualize when where you are is maybe not the best place to be, right? And so it's one thing to think, man, yeah, I'd do it all over again, because where I am, I feel like it's great, and I've got this long outlook ahead of me, versus I don't know exactly what my future looks like, but I still would do it that way.
Absolutely. And I've always said that, and my doctors don't like it when I say this, but I always kind of felt like doctors were sort of like bookies in Vegas. They look at you and say, okay, based on your age, based on your overall level of health, and based on your stage of cancer, you're probably going to live X. But what doctors don't understand is, you want to see your child graduate from high school. You want to see your child graduate from college. You want to walk your child down the aisle. You want to play with your grandkids. And having something to look forward to, something that is meaningful for you, really, I think, energizes you. It keeps your body, it keeps your mind, it keeps your spirit going. I've always wanted my life to be based on the decisions that I made, not on the ones that I didn't make or that somebody else made for me. But the converse of that is true. And I've seen it. I've seen it over these 13 years, where a doctor will say to a patient, yeah, you'll probably be dead in 2 years. And artists, literally, on the 2-year anniversary, that person dies.
That person dies, yes.
They're gone.
Yes.
And it's like, no. I mean, we're all going to go. But at the same time, I want to go as much on my terms, or I want to live as long as I possibly can. And that goes back to kind of this whole discussion, purpose. What is your purpose? And a big question that I asked myself when I got sick was, do you want to live? And it seems like a very simple question. Well, of course I want to live. But there are a lot of people, the answer to that question is no. I don't want to live through this. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to have my leg amputated. I don't want to be on chemotherapy. I don't want to live. I want to live, and I want to live as long and as good as I possibly can with whatever time I have left. Yeah, so I have my leg amputated. My doctor wants to start me on chemotherapy, and I was like, "Is it going to save my life?" And he's like, "Probably not, but it might buy you some more time." And I said, "Well, if the outcome is going to be the same, if I'm going to die, and I made peace with dying a long time ago, I said, I don't think I want to do it." I said, "But I'll go home and talk to my family." And I do. I literally went home. My daughter was at the Air Force Academy at the time. She was home on break. And I said, okay, here's what the doctor wants. I said, I don't want to do it. My daughter's like, all right, we need a family meeting. I'm like, family meeting? There's 3 of us. It's not like we got a board here or something like that. It's like, oh, we need a family meeting. So we literally sat around the kitchen table and individually talked about how we felt about me having chemotherapy. And then when that was over, my daughter's like, all right, let's take a vote. I didn't want dad to have chemotherapy. My wife and daughter raised their hand. I'm like, wait a minute.
You got outvoted.
Am I getting outvoted for something that I don't want? But artists, I remember back when I was in the police academy, our defensive tactics instructor used to have us bring a photograph of the people we loved the most to class. And as we were learning different techniques to defend ourselves, we were to look at that photograph, because he argued that you would fight harder for the people you love than you will fight for yourself. So I ended up taking chemotherapy, not because I wanted to, but because I love my wife and daughter more than I love myself. And in hindsight, it was the bridge that got me to the clinical trial drug that I'm on now. And had, that event not happened, had we not had that family meeting, there's a very good chance you and I wouldn't be talking right now.
To me, it's remarkable how those pieces come together to get you to where you are, and you don't know it in the moment, right? But if you think about the decisions you could have made, you wouldn't have landed where you are. And so it's very important to take the steps and trust the intuition, because it makes a big difference, I think, over the long run of where you end up landing.
Absolutely. It's surrounding yourself with good people, surrounding yourself with people that have your best interest in mind and love you enough that they're willing to tell you the truth. Even
That's
if
important.
even if it affects the relationship. And I mean, my family loves me enough to say, no, Dad, you're taking chemotherapy. Okay.
I think, this is, for me, very, it just kind of comes together because there's four thoughts that you put together that you try to impart with people. The first is to control your mind, right? And so do you mind talking through those 4 points for me?
Sure. So I came up with these, what I call my 4 truths, and they're just one sentence. I actually have them on a Post-it note here in my office. So I see them multiple times during the day and they constantly get reinforced in my mind. And I'll give them to you. The first one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined individual. The third one I look at is kind of a legacy type of truth, and it's this: what you leave behind is what you leave in the hearts of other people. And then the last one I think is pretty self-explanatory: as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I talk about these 4 truths sort of as the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to try to start to build a quality life off of.
I think those truths are absolutely spot on. And I think it's really important for people of all age brackets to think about. But I really do think those are fundamental building blocks for people who are making decisions today about where they want to be tomorrow. People who are starting careers, people who are making decisions about beginning a business, who are thinking about beginning a family, right? Like, thinking about those things, I think, aims you in the right direction. And it's fundamental to reflect on those and to really regroup, because things are not always going to go well, or not even the way you expected them to go. And being able to reflect and then think about that before you make a decision, I think, is important.
It is. And I use these truths, but I'm also, and I don't want your audience to think, I mean, you're looking at me now, there's no S on my chest. I do not have a cape and fly around with magical powers. I'm still treated for these tumors in my lungs. My wife would tell you this, every Sunday, I know I'm going to treatment on a Monday. It's like, I don't want to do this. I know what's coming. I have a terrible reaction to my medication. I don't want to shake. I don't want to throw up. I don't want to have a fever. I don't want to do this stuff. But it's okay. I don't want to do it, but I know I'm going to do it. It's just sort of a way of, okay, I got to get this out. And that was another thing about being a hostage negotiator. When we have these feelings, whether they're positive, whether they're negative, whether somebody's lying to you, whether they're telling you the truth, whatever, it's important to call it out. So if you're scared, I would tell you to call it out. Don't be like, oh, I'm tough, I'm macho, I don't have,
right.
I can call it out. You know what? I'm scared. You know what? I'm nervous. You know what? I'm afraid of the pain that's gonna. Call it out, because if you call it out, you put it out in front of you, and it's like, it's there. I can see it, and if I can see it, I can deal with it. And so by saying these things, I don't want you to think that I'm a baby or something like that. And granted, sometimes I feel like I am, but it's those things when you're getting ready to take a test and you're nervous. You know what? I'm really nervous about this test. Call it out. Call out those emotions so that you can deal with them. Trying to repress them, trying to put them down, it's just going to give you an ulcer. Call them out, deal with them, and then move forward in your life.
Incredible. If you enjoyed that clip, click up here and see the full episode. Make sure you also subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And if you want to see other full episodes of Uncommonly Remarkable, just click on this playlist and you'll get everything that you need. Thanks for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Uncommonly Remarkable.